Welcome to the web technology overview session. So, as part of this session, I'll be covering majorly on a very fundamentals of what is web technology and what kind of skill set it is involved, what kind of technologies it involves, and what kind of architecting is involved. It gives a very high level and very crisp and clear understanding about what is all about this web technology. So let's quickly jump into the agenda. So as part of this session, I'll be covering majorly into the introduction to web technology and a typical architecture, how the web technology will be used in developing the web-based applications and services, and we'll be covering the multiple frameworks available in the market and which one can best fit it for what kind of requirement. And followed with that, I'll be covering the competencies involved in complete web technology and the domain. So without further ado, let's get started with the introduction. So when it comes to web technology, it's all about understanding the requirement and customers and business and ensuring that we understand all these three parameters, and based on that parameter we'll think about the solution to the customer. So the web technology can be used in multiple domains and areas. So if it is in a financial environment, the design will be different, and it can be used in even the commercials. It can be used in the banking application. It can be used as a tools. It can be used as an examples like Flipkart, Amazon. So all these are built using this all web technology. So it's all about architecting the solution. So once we know the customer, once we know the requirement, once we know the business needs, so we need to decide about how do we architect the complete requirement solution, be it the tire-based application, or it may be the event-driven architecture, or it may be distributed architecture. There are ample number of solutions already available, and we can think beyond that. Having said, after that, we have to still work on what kind of frameworks will be best suited for our architecture. There are ample number of frameworks available in the market based on the different sort of architecture, what we design. Based on that we can suit some of the example like Spring Boot, Flask, and we have something called uh, Django, Angular. Many frameworks are available. We'll go in detail in the upcoming slides. And also we'll be looking into the programming language. So what kind of languages are involved in our web technology. It also about the development tools required by web technologies, kind of Eclipse, SDC, and a lot of tools are available. Ha- On top of all this, we also need to ensure about the validating the solution, validating the web solution. So with this all combination together, it's called web technology. So let's go in detail in subsequently. Okay, so as part of this slide, I'll be covering a very typical architecture, what a web technology or web expertise would be using to build or develop any kind of a web application or a web services. So this is also called as one of the multi-tier application or the multi-tier architecture. So as part of multi-tiering, I'll be choosing the three major tiers when we put any kind of a high-level solution or an architecting any business requirement into this solution. So here there are basically three major tiers comes into picture. The very first one is the front end. So if you see the blue color blocks, so these are called the front end models. So this front end tier is also called as a client tier and also called as a tier 1. So in this particular tier, there will be a lot of front end application development happens in terms of making sure that it satisfies all the customer user friendliness and user requirements, and in terms of user interfaces. So we'll be using basically the HTML, CSS, JavaScript as languages of the scripts to develop the front end, and the front end service will be based on the requirement. It can be a single service or it can be multiple services distributed but within this single tier. The very next tier is in a tier 2, which is also called the logic tier and also backend service. So as part of this, we'll be implementing the major core heart of the complete solution. Here we'll be implementing the complete business logic, where we'll be taking the decisions about the inputs what provided to user. So majorly we'll be using the Java, Spring, JPA, or maybe the Python as an developing. programming language, and these are also be developed with the different languages. So the market today we have been seeing majorly with the Java and the Python. So this business logic is nothing but as a service provider. It will be developed in terms of the services and exposed a couple of APIs, which are nothing but application programming interfaces. So we'll go in detail in some other videos, but here we'll be very much restricted to the what is this service is all about. This acts as a service provider to the front end. Any request come from the front end will be honored by this particular layer, and this complete business logic will be taken care to ensure that all the requests comes from the front end will be taken care. So most of the time, this business layer of logic will be distributed with logically to take the group of actions, or maybe to provide the group of services into a single packages. So we call these things sometimes microservices, where each service will be like a package. So that package will take care of the logical group of features. So for example, you want to have one service which will give you the employee details, so you can fetch the employees available in the particular company. You can fetch the email address of these employees. You can also compute the employee salaries, and all that will be one built in one service. And one more services could be like you will be requiring to understand the employee statistics, so that will be in the other service. And one will be like administrative, so that will be considered as another service. So like that, the logical functionalities will be grouped separately in terms of microservices. So in a nutshell, business logic tier is a very key tier to where the most of the logical computation happens. So the next one is a database tier. So it's a third tier and also called the data tier, where we'll be majorly working on storing the data into the databases or the file system. The data can be of the structured or unstructured. When it comes to structured, we'll be using the SQL, or we'll be using the Oracle DBs. And when it comes to unstructured, we'll be using the MongoDB or maybe file systems. So the complete data will be managed under the tiers, and all the table creations or all the kind of the managing the store procedure, everything will be taken care of. So business logic layer will be the key interface for this database layer, which will be interacting more frequently to get the data and process it the business logic tier, and then pass it to the front end for the end user to build. So these are the three major tiers or the services what we'll be building as part of web application development or the web application hosting. So once we have these three layers ready, so end users can go into their mobile, or they can go into the laptop or PCs and log in and get connected through these services to enjoy the application through completely internet HTTP protocol. So you just enter the HTTP address, you are ready to access the application. So everything will be taken care by all these three tiers. The very next one is, once we know the architecture, we have to decide about how to build that application. Which once we know the architecture, we have to choose the programming language, we have to choose the framework, we have to choose the tools, and blah 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 blah. So very much first important is the framework. So what are my basic framework I'll be using? So we will not be building the application from scratch every time. So there are ample number of highly competitive frameworks available in the market. So if you are decided to develop the application using this basically the logical service and using the Java, you will be choosing the Spring and Spring Boot as a framework, which are very highly efficient when it comes to the NEC based designs. So if you want to go for a Django or Flask as a framework, so you can choose the Python as a programming language, or using that you can build beautiful application and beautiful services. So these are to basically to develop the backend services. So you have to develop the front end service, that is nothing but the tier one. So for that also we have a couple of services. So for example, the Angular and React, these two are the framework which are specifically meant for developing the front end application. So where it will becomes very simplified to render the complete the UI or HTML resources, and even you can make the local computations in terms of identifying the some logical tests. Everything checks can also be taken care in the front end itself. No need to go back to backend service to do the validation. So that everything will be taken care by these frameworks. So These are the two major frameworks we'll be using in the front end. So let's have a more detailed understanding about these frameworks by going through each of these links provided here. That will give you a very fair idea about what is capable of each framework. So once we decide the framework, we have to know the competencies required to develop this complete web application or web services what we are targeting. So I've just classified all these technical competencies with respect to each layer what we spoke earlier. So when it comes to front end, so if you want to be very much expertise in front end, or you want to develop anything specifically on the front end side, so you must know the HTML, you must know the CSS, and you must know the JavaScript. So these are the key programming languages we use in the front end design. And also you should be aware of Angular, Bootstrap, all this kind of technologies and the um, frameworks which will be used to develop the front end. And also you should know the big tools, how do you build this front end, what kind of IDs you need. So like Visual Studio values for the Angular and React application building using JavaScript. And in the backend services side development, you must be very much familiar about the programming language like Java, JavaScript, Python. So they will be used majorly to build all this micro services based API implementations. So you should be aware of the frameworks like Spring, Boot, and for testing JUnit and JPA for your database communication, MSC, which is a pattern where you'll be developing the complete solution using very much clear design and very much clear understanding way of developing the code. And you'll be using Eclipse or STS, one of these as an IDE to develop backend services. You should be always almost familiar by HTTP, HTTPS, RESTful APIs, Swagger. These are all key skills you should know when you want to be pitching into the web technologies. So you should also know these servers, what kind of servers are required to run these services. So these services should be running in an infinite timeline so that you can request anytime the functionality will honor. So we have some things like Tomcat and all those services already available. So coming back to the database side, so you should know at least one SQL database, and you should know complete SQL query language. It's a structured query language, so that you can query all the database and get the data and update, delete all the crude operations you can do using this SQL. And you should know at least Oracle or MySQL database, like PostgreSQL. And to access these SQL, you will be having a lot of developer tools. So for example, if you want to access Oracle, you have Oracle SQL developer tool. So using this, you can access the DB and update, edit, whatever you can do all the operations. So if you're also working on the non-structured data like videos and audio kind of files, you must know the NoSQL DBs. Coming back to the test side, so when it comes to web technology, the testing also has its own area of circumstance where it will have its own kind of tools, technologies, and programming language. So from a web technology testing point of view, you should know at least Java, Python, and Xcode to ensure that you are able to write the test automation scripts, and you should be able to do the unattended testing for web-based applications. So there are certain tools like Selenium, TestNG, Cucumber, which will definitely help in optimizing the test automation. And you must also be aware of the frameworks you will use in developing the test automations, like Page Object Model, Page Factory. These are all already standardized framework which gives you a tremendous control over the end-to-end automation of the complete web applications. And you should also be using the some of the utility the tools developed like Postman, Structured JMeter for a different purpose. So in general, we need some of the competencies like SVN for your source code management. It may be Git for your source code management, and Jenkins for your the automating the jobs, building it out. So Maven is basically, yeah, you know that Maven can be used for the building the source. If you're developing a code or a service in Java, Maven will help you automatically to download the packages and build and make the package ready, and Gradle and enter the something similar build tools. And having said that, you should also be aware of how and what are AWS, like Amazon Web Services or GCP. Any one cloud solution understanding will be a very great advantages when you are into web technology. You should know Kibana, Kafka. These are all basic fundamentals technologies used in building the computer and web applications. As I said, microservice concept is very interesting and very useful when you are developing a huge enterprise application or huge commercial applications. And having said that, you have another opportunity to use the Docker and Kubernetes to ensure that your build environment, your deployment environment, your test environment, everything is seamlessly same and no observation variation from one environment to another environment. And it's very easy to package and deploy the complete solution to the any machine using these two containerization technology and the tools. Yeah. So with this, I would like to tell that. So you must be familiar with all these competencies to be a full stack web developer, and you must be expertise increased in one of these layer to be an expertise developer in any one of these areas. But anyway, however, you must be at least aware of all these competencies if you want to be a full stack developer. Yeah. So this is all about the web technology overview. So this gives a very high level understanding of what is web technology, what is it's involved. So we'll be looking in detail about each of these items in subsequent videos. Thank you for watching.